Hello, Hal. You're there.
There we go. All right. You can hear me now, I think, over the music there, Cliff. Yes?
I can hear you. Can you
Excellent.
hear me?
I can indeed. Give me 1 second, and I'm going to copy the link and put you in here. And
Can I
see.
ask you a question? Can
Yeah.
other folks hear us?
Yes, hold on 1 second. Let's see.
Well, I want to make sure they can't hear us. I need to ask you something. Hal?
Hold on 1 second. Yep. Doing it just
No, I'm
such.
just saying, can other folks hear us, or is it just me and you?
They can hear us, yes.
Well, then I'll hold on later.
Yeah. This is, we'll do, I'm still arranging this
I
up.
sent you a text, I guess I should say. If you got it, then you'll know what I'm talking about.
Okay, cool. Hold on 1 second. Yes, I will share it. All good.
It would be awesome, because it's doing some good stuff. So, that's
Love
all.
it. Okay. All right, I'm gonna jump in here in 1 second and get us started. I have to, for whatever reason.
Fantastic. I hear you very low, though, just so you know. It's not loud.
Well, that's, how about now? Yeah.
that could
check,
be on
check.
my end.
Yeah, it
No,
could
that's
be.
on my end.
Yeah.
That's on my end. I'm an idiot. I made it louder. We're good.
No worries. Okay, I'm gonna jump straight in because we have so much to talk about this morning. Give me
Yeah,
one more
let's do
second,
it.
and I'll pop us in. All right. Here we go. Now let me. Hi, chat room. Hit that like, everybody. I've got to jump in here and go to this, and then I've got to add. I have to put the link in the thing with the thing and the link and the link because for some reason I've got to work out this whole like. And 3, 2, has a pow. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. Cliff Schechter joining us like magic. There he is, sir. Obviously,
Magic.
Fighting the good fight against big tech by using AirPods, which is always one of my standout things when I'm watching anybody be interviewed on Newsmax or one of those places where they're decrying woke corporate tech all the time, and yet they can't get enough of the big gay Apple products. The company with probably the most overt pride and AIDS Walk related groups that they've had forever. I've done AIDS Walk in San Francisco half a dozen times at least with large groups that from Apple that were sent there, whatever. And yet somehow big woke corporate never seems to bother them when they're like, I mean, you can't argue with success. The shit is good. It's good shit. How are you this fine morning?
Well, just because you're the special man you are, and actually, quite seriously, because I do love doing this show and all that, I actually had a weekend where I came down with something, thankfully not COVID. But the cool thing about cold and flu medicine is, you know, they have that phenyldrine stuff in there that basically is meth. So,
Right.
you take a little bit of that stuff, and oh my God, does that jack you up? So I'm feeling pretty good actually for the moment. I don't know in a couple of hours, but I
Dayquil,
didn't have a
bitches.
lot.
Right.
I'm like, if I say anything
Yeah.
right now, if I say any crazy shit, like if I start telling you all that.
Does everything feel good, Cliff? Does everything feel fine? Do you feel all right, my friend? I've had a little of that myself.
I'm starting. My
Yeah.
name is Mike Lindell, and I sell pillows.
Right.
And I'm starting a new line of Trump colonoscopies. And if I do that, then you should probably figure that it's the
Trump
meth
cold
talking,
medicine. It's the greatest thing you've ever smoked. It's a pillow fight with your brain. Nothing's more comfy and yet painful. Don't forget.
No, MAGA is right. That's where the real art comes from. And that's where all the real revolution is.
That's right.
There's people dancing around with the Trump flags they're defiling while honoring America.
That's right. We go now to Charlie Kirk. Hi, I'm Charlie Kirk live with Mike Liddell's coming out in just a minute.
Potato.
I just want to make points that Trump is right about genetics. There are people coming to this country with really bad genes, and we need to get them out of
Can I
here.
ask you,
Yeah.
Charlie, have Idaho
Yes.
potatoes hit you up for copyright yet? Because I kind of feel like you're stealing their brand, pal. I mean,
No.
I don't know. Go ahead.
Look, I can't even go to Iowa anymore, or someone chases me around with something that makes julienne fries. I'm like, I don't even know julienne. Who are you talking about? I don't even understand. Julienne who? I think that's a pretty good
God.
Charlie Kirk. As Charlie Kirks go, that's a pretty rock solid. I'm Charlie Kirk.
I'm a fan of your Charlie Kirk. I think you've got a solid Charlie Kirk for all of us. So, in addition to some of, can you maybe combine a Charlie Kirk with like a Zoltran? Because I feel like those could go well together.
Oh, yes. You mean Zoltan or Zoltran, the
Zoltan.
robot?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm being an idiot. I meant Zoltan. Yeah.
No, I would never combine the
I'm
two.
on meth,
Because,
so
because Zoltan was here to save the Earth, and Charlie Kirk clearly is not. Let's just be...
Well, that's where your artistic license comes in, is how would those forces meet? And, what would happen there?
I honestly, the creative team necessary to create a mix between a space cult leader and Charlie Kirk, that I would need to even put something like that together, is unavailable today because it's Putin's birthday, so they're all out of the country.
Oh,
so yeah,
Vladimir Putin is Jill Stein having birthday. Jill Stein and Michael Flynn and other invitees will show up.
Jill
Jill
Stein.
Donald Trump very well. He's very distanced from them.
I had Jill Stein jump out of a cake.
Impressions.
Yes, I had Jill Stein jumping out of a cake and one of my oligarch friends jumping out of a window. It is in many ways the perfect day. So
it was perfect. When Ted Cruz came to town, I told him we only have 5th floor room with balcony at hotel.
So. and he has and oddly enough has the weeniest voice in the world. So he said, okay. Now.
Yes. Okay, go ahead. Well, I'll stop with you're supposed to be the comedian, but I can't shut the fuck up.
No, it's all right. No, I don't mind because you're gacked up on.
I'm a wannabe comedian.
Understood, but this is also the medication talking. I would argue that this is, if you want to know why Trump uses the green Sudafed, this is why.
Okay, I think you're right, but I would also argue if people would look back at past shows of me on here, I don't know if it is the meth. I'm going to use an excuse, but I'm every bit the asshole no matter when you have me on.
I know, which is why it's why you're a regular now. That's that. Like that.
All right.
That was what I was like. Finally, somebody who gets me. That said,
I do. You had me at hello. And Zoltan.
So
actually, you had me when you originally had me before I met you, and I even knew you. When watching with my kids, I got to say, hey, I think I'd actually met you once at one of those events out in Vegas, those mass torch things. that I used to do PR for, and I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I met you briefly, and I got to tell my kids, I'm like, I remember the guy that asked Spider-Man if his suit was too tight and around the jock. I got to meet that guy, and my kids were very impressed with that. So I want to thank you for that.
The number of parental cool points I've handed out just by being Mr. Davenport are immeasurable, and I'm very proud of that. Now now that I'm finally getting us up on Instagram in about 2 seconds, we'll get to real news because nobody can appreciate. No, now that we can fully appreciate this there we go, and we're live there. Yes, a clicking. Okay. So this is, there's a lot to talk about today, but one of the things I talk about with, when I'm on tour with the Sexy and the Liberals, is the fact that we drink from this news hose all the time. Like it's not even the fire hose. It's a busted hydrant of news.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and that's why no one can keep track of anything. It's the thing Bannon said they planned to do back in 2016. Flooding the zone with shit was his exact quote, because they knew that our news media can barely handle 2 stories at the same time, much less 47.
Well, I would argue that is also true of the maggots as well, because I tweeted, I sheeted earlier, because when it's spelled with an X, it's shitter. I sheeted earlier that the one upside to maggots losing interest in the Springfield in giving FEMA people death threats was that they have left the people of Springfield alone. They are for all the fact that the news is
to people working hard to save people in North and South Carolina. So it's good.
Right.
You want to switch off who you're threatening. Right? It's
I don't think
it's just the same
it's too
people.
Exhausting. I don't know who I'm going to death threat today in MAGA world. Now, obviously, so we will see. Let me pop this out, and we will see if this ends up being, as big a part of the news cycle as it should be. Because I got to say, none of what Trump says is news to anyone who's been paying attention. It's news, I think, only in some cases because he finally says something out loud. That he finally, when the dictator comment was an absolute truth moment for him, and then he tried to walk it back, and Sean Hannity tried to help him put the toothpaste back in the tube. But everybody gets it. Nobody's dictator for one day and then gives that power up. It's ridiculous. Of course, Trump would sign a nationwide abortion ban, but of course he's going to lie about it because
he wouldn't even sign a congressional one. He'd sign an executive order, and the Supreme Court would find a way to say it worked. He'd sign an executive order on 4,000% tariffs. And our economy would completely go into a fucking tailspin, which, by the way, is what he wants and what they want, the crypto bros, because then they can do their best to try to say, you can't trust the American dollar, put all of your money in crypto. There's just a number of ways that he obviously benefits from chaos. Markets and foreign policy don't do well with chaos, and those are the 2 areas where, and they're related, both related to him just wanting to pocket money, where he can fuck things up the worst with what he does. Because if he can cause enough chaos that NATO, sort of in some ways at least spiritually falls apart and embraces Erdogan and Orban and Putin's obvious and G and the rest of them, he can realign a world order, and he can fuck with markets and our dollar and try to grift that way. And those are if you're the people around him, you get that those 2 areas rely the most on consistency, stability. So there's money to be made off of letting him go buck wild.
Unless your goal is to buy the dip. Because what better situation, and this has always been the problem with having somebody who has business interests outside of government. This is why people worry about congresspeople and senators who have control over a particular stock. Is the low res crime is, I know we're about to give them a big contract because they deserve it, so I'm going to buy their stock and watch it right up. Right? That is insider trading, and it's bad, but it's different than crashing the economy on purpose so you can scoop up all the stocks for pennies on the dollar and then let it inflate again through tax breaks or whatever. Or the fact that
that's what I was trying to say, to be clear before. Or you just do your own big short, right? You bet against the market.
That's exactly right.
They know.
You short everything.
This way, you benefit on the way down.
And then fuck it into non-existence.
And you benefit on the way up. You win in every direction. If they know he's going to undermine our economy to such a point that everything's going to crash, all they have to do is short everything. Well,
and also there's this weird illusion, and I'm sure you've seen this. There seems to be this weird illusion about the stock market that it's only U.S. investors or something. Like only Americans have money in the stock market. There's this weird kind of subtle illusion to that, which
That's
is
the way
not
Twitter works too, by the way.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's not. It's all Elon's money. None of it is. 80% of it isn't Saudi cash at all.
Right.
That they didn't care about losing.
Up to 40, or what was the number? 40. Somebody did a study. I think it was somewhere between 40, 60%, something like that, of the ridiculous, crazy comments that end up either being chaos or pro-Trump aren't coming from bot farms, aren't coming from China, aren't coming from whatever, as in fact they are. Which is, again, a study just showed at least 40% of them are, because, again, no, Twitter is not just made up of Americans. It's not anything close. That was sort of the joke I was making. They have infiltrated it, and they are using it for their own devices. And I do want to say, though, quickly, because you brought this point up, and it's so important to get back to this point. I often find like there's just something new and more disqualifying for Trump. And I'm hoping Democrats embrace this moment, not because it's good. It's a horrible moment, but embrace this moment where even people like Tom Tillis, the senator of North Carolina, won't call Trump a liar, but are saying in no uncertain terms he's lying. And, and the Governor McMaster, the one who's a Republican in South Carolina, is saying, nope, we're getting everything we need. This is the time to jujitsu and turn around. They want to use this to their advantage because they're desperate, they're losing, and they want to do everything they can to win voters, particularly in the Southeast, who are suffering. But this is where you turn around on them and say, is this the fucking guy you want in charge? Remember, this will be the thing that reminds people of his COVID management and other management of tragedies, which is he lies, grifts, and people die. That is the result of it. There are people now, I don't care. I can't sit here and do a study. It's like stochastic terrorism. You can't necessarily predict where and how, but you can predict it's going to happen. I can't sit here and tell you exactly who and where. I can tell you there are people in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, who got bad information because of Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin and whatever, who have died because of it, because they didn't think there was any aid coming in a place where there was. And they thought maybe they should stay when they were being told to leave. And this is what's going on. So I think this is such a horror show that we should be using this to point out how dangerous he is.
Well, I mean, this is the acute version of the anti-vax conspiracy stuff, in an emergency, in a specific material emergency of these assholes you can't see a vaccine working and you can't see a bacteria eating up your organs. So it may be God just wants it this way or doesn't want this way for some people, but you can definitely see muddy water rushing through your house and what laying waste to your town. And that's
always the thing, right?
It's
the things that they can get away with lying about because people they're too abstract. Whereas
it's why they're flat earthers. Because none of them travel.
With the vaccine, it's too hard to prove. A lot of stuff until, of course, many of these people died and it, as so often happens, and recanted and said, "Oh my God, I can't believe I believed them." And some just doubled down and then became crazier because they can't accept psychologically that they let them family members die because they believe. Yeah,
their ego is bigger than their survival instinct.
Correct, but this is different. Again, this is like a military attack. This is like. I'm just trying to think of various comparisons. An economic crash. This is something that people feel, see, can touch, can understand. Particularly, so many people
see the damage. Zone.
We over here, 5-6 days ago, we lost our power. I'm in Cincinnati. I mean, we're decently inland, and we lost our power because of the wind and the rain for about 3-4 hours. I'm trying to remember which day last week. So I mean, that's the power of this thing, right? Is that there are people as far inland as where I am. So certainly in western parts of Pennsylvania and parts of West Virginia, states to the south of here, Kentucky, places like that, who need to be able to rely on the government for honest information. Kind of like what happened before this in Springfield, where you had to be able to rely on the government. And again, Mike DeWine, the way Tom Tillis tepidly came out and said Trump's lying. That's great, and we should use it for more. But the problem is even when you do it tepidly like that, some people are like, oh, I don't know who to trust now. And they're so in the Republican bubble, and people die because of it. I
yes,
mean, again,
Trump's lying and people are dying. There was this whole thing about like during the vaccine stuff, Trump lied, people died about him slow walking the COVID response so he could get his Chinese deal through that, by the way, never fucking went. He's now back to touting that deal. He's dropped the whole, well, because of COVID, I didn't like him anymore. Blah, blah. He's dropped that entirely and started pretending that the fucking deal actually was good. He's like, I told him 50. They thought I said 15. And then they were like, I want 50. And they agreed to 50. No, they fucking didn't. And they didn't. And again, the deal itself was for 30 and ultimately spaced out over like 5 years. And it was for a $10 billion raise in buying of agricultural goods over the... Well, China needs all the food it can fucking get. It's not hard to get them to buy all that shit. He just wanted to charge them slightly more was the theory, but they could get it from somewhere else. So they're like, oh, we'll just buy it from fucking South America. It was a lie, and it never happened.
Who the fuck cares? You know what I mean? Like when when we've been in an emergency going on, and this is where, again, look, this is anecdotal. I am in Ohio. We're still, Sherrod Brown is up here. It's still a swing state. I know it's a swing state because I saw the most recent poll where we were only down 4 points, and they started advertising here 2 months ago, and we haven't advertised at all, which should tell you how close it was then and why they freaked out. And and I have a few friends I've spoken to who I would call conservative men, most of whom, are on the fence and this and that. And a couple people who I thought were going to be leaning Trump, and I was going to be like, I don't want to talk to you about this anymore, or maybe at all. I was shocked, again, anecdotal, but I've got 3 people I'm thinking of specifically who are sitting there looking me in the face. People who have voted Republican forever are like, don't think I can do Trump again. Don't think I can vote Trump again. And so to me, this is where, because even they see the lies, they're people, they're business people. They're not in the Trump, they're not in the cult. They're people that care about their taxes being lower and all this. Right. Yes, I would argue with them at any time, and I think it's selfish of them. I'm not going to fight with, whatever. Right. But the point is that they're getting enough information outside to see that Trump is using this and lying about it the way people here in Cincinnati knew he was lying about Springfield, which isn't that far away from here. And they're seeing this stuff, and he's losing. This is why you see a lot of the Republicans for Kamala stuff going on, and a lot of her having the Jeff Flakes of the world and other people come out and endorse her, because there is a contingent of conservative men conservative white men, they tend to be well-educated, they tend to be in the business community, who may end up voting for Kamala because they're just like, this guy is just too fucked up in Trump.
Well, and a lot of them are, quite frankly, looking at Mark Cuban and Jeff Bezos, and Cuban's outwardly for Harris. Bezos is softly considered to be for her, even if he's not. Like, he's definitely going to. It doesn't, like, it
Reed
clearly.
Hastings, Reed Hoffman, a number of these guys, founder of LinkedIn, like a number of major
but real businessmen, real guys who've made real money.
Yes, Cuban's the most public of them because he's pretty good at public debating, and he's a guy who likes the spotlight, owned the Dallas Mavericks, used to all this kind of thing. So some of the other ones, you may not know their names as well, but I mean, if people who know business, these are major business figures.
Yes.
And here we have the former CEO of Procter & Gamble, which is a pretty big fucking company, folks.
Oh, yeah.
You want to look it up.
Cincinnati is the Procter & Gamble hub. By the way, a company that
very much outward, by the way, in favor of Kamala Harris. Very much speaking out in favor of Kamala Harris. So,
and Republicans drove them in that direction over a period of time because if you'll recall, they were trying to attack Procter & Gamble because the logo was satanic. Remember that shit back in the 90s?
I do.
Like, that's where like Republicans have, the way they beat up on Hillary Clinton for a long time to the point where it resulted in her winning the popular vote but losing the Electoral College. Republicans did that to a bunch of businesses as well. And oddly enough,
right, we saw DeSantis do it with Disney. We've seen Trump now do it with John Deere. I think these business folks are looking at that too. That I mean, this was supposed to be theoretically the pro-business party,
right?
But you do the
and only American
thing
companies,
they don't like. Right? They'll come after you, and these guys know it.
You notice that when Republicans talk about big anything, and by the way, I think the whole like big pharma, big tech, even big government is just a lazy attack on something to make it look so complex that you couldn't possibly know any of the solutions. And listen to me, I know, it's a dragon, and I'm only I can slay it. That falls right into the Trump thing. Big pharma is like 9 different fucking pharmaceutical companies all competing for the same audience of goods, trying to find a cure or a solution to a disease, both chronic and and life-ending, all the fucking time, and they don't work together. The same thing is true of quote-unquote big tech. If anybody thinks that Elon Musk and Zuckerberg are actually on the same side, they're fucking bananas. And it's true of all of these things. Or Apple, for that fuck's sake. Like, they'll throw the tech companies like NVIDIA and the companies that make shit in with the companies that don't make anything. Like, there's a huge difference between even X and Snapchat. Like, Snapchat actually has physical shit they make. X doesn't. Like, Snapchat is the reason it's not as profitable as some of these other ones is because they're moving into the physical material stuff. They made their Snap glasses, and they made the drone I use at Nerd Halen, the little yellow one. That's a Snapchat drone. And they put it on the market, and it's safe. It's got bumpers on it, so you can use it in public without worrying about it cascading into your grandma's eyeball. And so I was like, this will work. If there's an audience and I lose it, it'll be fine, right? That's whatever. But the point is, like, there is no big anything of these motherfuckers. And even their lobbying groups are at odds half the time.
The thing people need to get is that, look, big government was a phrase invented by Republicans to try to attack the regulatory state.
Yes.
And in so many ways, how's that working out for you folks?
Yes.
One of the biggest things that Democrats failed at, and granted, look, there was a period of time in the 60s and 70s where I do think there were some regulations that were passed by people, some Democrats who didn't know exactly what they were talking about. You can overregulate certain industries, but you regulate a few things, maybe overregulate them. Doesn't mean you've overregulated everything. Doesn't mean like, hey, let's get rid of the Food and Drug Administration, which, by the way, Project 2025 says we should do.
Yes,
because I want to eat
and
fucking
the EPA.
maggots. I want to have a steak with some really tasty maggots in it. I mean, it's ludicrous because, and this is what we always need to do, is they go for the generic term that scares people.
Yes.
We always need to respond with the individual stories, whether it's individual companies, individual human beings,
immigration,
or individual regulations, and saying, do you want Gary Busey driving on the same road as you at 145 miles per hour with a bottle of Jim Beam in one hand and Southern Comfort in the other, finding a third hand, because Gary Busey may have grown a third hand by now, shooting a shotgun off in random directions, and doing fucking wheelies. No, you don't. So we need to pass some fucking regulations. I mean, regulations are necessary.
Sure.
This is the stuff I always did when I was heavily involved with Every Town for Gun Safety and the Bloomberg effort, and we were able to successfully get some successes. We still need a lot more on guns, which is, regulation. And I'm just like, you mean like somebody can't go through a red light and fucking
pass a law against buttered sausage? Why would people put butter on sausage?
What regulations is it that you hate?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, Trump will say we get rid of 2 for every 1 we put on or whatever. Well, what's the generic? What are the 2 versus the 1? Is the 1 you're putting on a woman's right to fucking choose? That's the regulation you put on, and the 2 you took off was one that protected like mercury in like from seeping from coal mines into rivers and streams in eastern Kentucky, and one that stopped and flammable pajamas.
I'm sorry, you go ahead. Sorry.
And non-flammable pajamas for children.
Okay, see, you're going to get to children the same way I was going to say, like, hey, kids, I hope you really enjoy a great ride. We're deregulating roller coasters.
Yeah.
At this point, no weight requirements, no track requirements. You may get off alive, or you may go for the ride of your fucking life. Absolutely, that's what
do you
we
remember?
want.
Hold on. Remember, there was a big pushback because there were Chinese toys coming over that had lead paint on them. And they were being shipped. The reason that they were getting into the country was because they were coming in as under the $800 de minimis clause and showing up in like crappy little gift shops and stuff like that around the country, and they weren't going through the regular import of toys system. Right. Not only did the Democrats put on a regulation about those things, that they can't be brought into the country fucking period unless you're an antique dealer and you've got a label on it that says this is an old toy from 1930 that has fucking lead paint in it, but new made toys cannot be brought in. But they also just fixed the de minimis clause. That's what they're trying to do right now, is fix the de minimis clause in imports from China, because they're getting around the import restrictions and on the country coming in because of drop shipping at the under 800. So they don't ship it to a store, they ship it to a person's house, and if it's under $800, whatever it is, they can't do anything about it. Well, if that's an $800 single item, that's one thing, but it's usually a box full of keychains, right, that are a nickel a piece. And so it's under $800, but it's the entire stock for the next 3 years at a store. Right, at one of these bodegas in New York, and so that's how they get around it. That's how there's a bunch of cheap shit on every impulse buy wall at a bodega in New York City or in San Francisco or any of those other places, and they're all toxic as fuck because there's no rules about any of it. So the de minimis thing even protected that.
There was some pet food one time that got in here, and we didn't realize it, and it came from China. This was about 7, 8, this was at least 8 years ago when we, with 2 of our earlier cats, and they were both poisoned and almost died. And thankfully they didn't, and they lived healthy lives after that. But what they get, they were like mycosis, is that what it is? Like there was some shit that was in this pet food that was not supposed to be in there, and we were told quite likely, Chinese factory, nobody's paying attention. I mean, that's what happens when you don't regulate it, and we didn't even realize where this shit was coming from, or we never would have bought it. You know what I mean?
Let me tell you, real quick about the Chinese cat food part of it. Okay, so one of the biggest scandals in China that while I was over there, that broke while I was there and was immediately silenced by the government, was fake vaccines. At one point, they were having a problem with this for a long time. People giving fake vaccines. It happened during COVID as well. Just people getting saline injections for measles and all kinds of shit. Kids being brought in for their things, and they get a shot and there's nothing in it, and the kid dies of measles. That happened a bunch of times. The other thing was fake fucking baby food. So there was remember how we had a limited number.
Right, I remember that.
We ran out of a certain kind of baby food as the Biden administration was coming in because of a lack of fixes made by the Trump team on their way out the door, because they didn't give a fuck. Trump, he shows that chart that says, that how immigration was, and it's he's like, look where the red arrow is. That's where I left office. That was April of 2020. And it's a lie on a material sense, but it's kind of fucking true. That motherfucker checked out. Once it looked like there were riots in the streets and all the shit he didn't want to deal with and COVID, he was like, fuck this noise. And when he lost the election, he keeps saying...
Except for when he ran down to his bunker and he hid, which, as Melania pointed out for her book, was very scary.
Very shocking scary. Well, because he was crying and shitting himself.
It was very dangerous.
So when I was over there in 2018, 2019, and visiting there in 2015, there's like constant scandals about this stuff. And the number one thing smuggled into China is chocolate. And drugs are right behind that. All this bullshit about they don't have a drug problem is nonsense. But it's absurd. But chocolate's the main one because you can't import these certain chocolates that are in Hong Kong into the mainland. And they're those little gold-leafed balls like that you see in. You can buy them in like fucking Kroger's now, but they're kind of fancy chocolates or whatever. Right. They come in rows like eggs.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are big in China, especially around the holidays, and so big that there are huge factories cranking out fake ones that will fucking kill you. And they don't care. They just make them. Like the joke is that if you buy a lollipop in China. From the, if everybody would check, and these are my Chinese friends telling me this, like buy it from this place, not from this place, because if you buy it from this place, this is how they put the wrapper on at the factory.
I might go with not buying a lollipop at all in China, but okay, yeah, I'm with you.
They literally they put they wet it with their mouth.
I might wait till you get back home for your lollipop and just sort of go on a. Even if you're a lollipop addict, just sort of, go for it and maybe try to lay off while you're there.
And so sad. And we did this interview with this Australian businessman who had a couple of steakhouses in there. And it was so funny because we were supposed to do this like puff piece largely about, because it's a travel show. I'm not there to start a political fight with anybody. I love Chinese culture and the Chinese people. So I was there to there are a lot of places that used to be lovely to visit. Used to be great places to go.
I mean, I've only, as China goes, I've only been to Hong Kong, but I loved it. And it's been a while now, and I've heard what they've done to it, which is fucked
up. It's so it's
because I went there,
fucking heartbreaking.
I went there right after the changeover, from the agreement where the British had it for 100 years, and it was when was I there? I was there in '99, so it only switched over 1 year. 2 years earlier.
That year.
And they hadn't really, they kept up to, it was, I think, 98. And they kept up to their promise of not messing with it yet. But you knew they were going to slowly but surely, they just knew they couldn't do it all at one time.
Yeah, because the world was watching. So they set a 20-year plan of we'll just kill off all these people over the course of 2 decades because if we do it all at once,
kill off all these people.
The whole world.
Crony capitalism will knock people out of these business positions and put our cronies in there, which of course, in the end means you get the equivalent of Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump running stuff and everything. So these companies that were doing well go to shit and are of no value anymore because you have the imbeciles, all sorts of stuff.
It's brutal. Yeah. And by the way, what are regulations for? But to make sure that stuff doesn't slip through the cracks and people don't get poisoned or die because of stuff that's easily preventable. Well, what happens when you have crony government like that? These people look the other way. Look at the fucking Russian military.
I would add one more thing, Hal.
Look at the tires on Russian military trucks. Right. Go ahead.
But, the only reason I want to say is I feel like this one's really important because we haven't even mined this one yet, which is it's everything you said, but it also, a lot of those kinds of regulations stop easy cons, right? Where people don't get
thank you, Jenny Faye.
I don't know, Trump University, for example.
Yes.
If you have a regulation in place that you can't lie to people, bullshit them, tell them they're going to get a degree, take their money, and fucking do nothing for them. So he ends up getting sued. He ends up having to pay out $25 million. Guess what happens if he makes that regulation go away? I mean, Trump University, there'll be more of those than University of Phoenix, around this country. This is the kind of stuff.
One of the reasons he hates Kamala.
Like him. What?
One of the reasons he hates Kamala.
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
she went after those same kind of companies, those for-profit colleges that were just diploma mills that didn't have any meaning whatsoever, weren't accredited, bullshit. The students that went there didn't teach them a fucking thing, and ultimately they're
95%. I know because I did some work on this issue. They had 95% non-graduation rates. They learned no valuable skills. There were no jobs waiting for them when they came out. It was a complete bullshit con. And that's the thing, is if your whole life is cheap, shitty cons like Donald Trump and using everything from your name to your fame to whatever to fool people, then if you can get rid of enough regulations, oh my God, it's the easiest way to make money in the world, right? We already know. I mean, there's been a million different ones with his own people. Hey, if you give us to us once, we're going to magically sign you up for the recurring donation, button.
Right.
And, all these other things were actual Trumpers have class action sued him because he's, they're his piggy bank.
Well,
so in any case.
So regulations good if they're managed by people who care about them. Cutting regulations bad if people are just doing it slapdash to either benefit themselves or just to say you got a certain number of them off the books, which is how Trump works. He doesn't pay attention to any. He's not a detail guy. It's why he has 1,500 LLCs. Basically, all of more than 1,000 of them are just a bank account with a private partner attached to an LLC.
Shell companies, probably.
Right. Well, there's not even a shell company. There's, the irony that, and this is one of the reasons why Comer went so hard after Biden's shell companies of all is to run interference on the fact that Trump has these 1,500 LLCs, 1,000 of which are attached to just a bank account. No business, nothing happens, but it's a real estate LLC, so everybody involved can stay anonymous. Now, Democrats...
And that's why Trump... the high-end apartments in New York, I wish I could remember this article better, and you may remember. I mean, there are numerous on this, but one specifically that there was something, like most of the reputable real estate developers in New York would only accept up to maybe it was 5% or something of that manner, something like that of the number of the number of the apartments, condos, whatever it was they were selling, would they allow to be from shell companies, anonymous shell companies. Trump, it was 60%.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it was
these are money laundering buildings. Trump Soho is a fucking money laundering exercise. It has nothing to do with the people that live there. That's why the people who live there don't spend any fucking time there. There are a lot of turnkey rich people. I have always struggled, I'm sure as you have and other people have, when you fantasize about this idea of dream home, but where am I going to build it? And then what happens to my old house? And do I put my kid in it and then they live in it or whatever? And then how do I visit and what? And
I fantasize about it all day, every day.
These ideas of having 3 houses or something boggles my mind. It's as silly to me in some ways as these guys who are busted for having 2 whole families. And I'm like, how do you bullshit 2 people? You know what I mean? This is amazing. So it's absurd.
How do you have enough time is what I want to know. It's impressive work.
They don't. And a lot of these investment apartments in Trump Tower and stuff, they do these kind of LLC, managed through a family trust, 6 degrees of separation, ownership of these places. That's not your second, third home at all. They don't ever set foot in the fucking place, but they think of it as sort of a timeshare in New York, that if they do want to go there, they can go there. But meanwhile,
they may
most of the year it's empty. The whole building is empty.
It's your drug lords. It's your oligarchs. It's your, these glass buildings in New York where the top floors are basically empty. And essentially, it's these same people. They've also have places in L.A., London, Hong Kong, Paris, Rome. You name a place in, throughout the world where Baku and parts of the Middle East where they can get away with all their shit, and that, that's the way they're living. It's I may spend a week there. I may decide that this year I want to spend a month there. But I promise you they're not spending most of their time there, and they may be spending none of it. It is absolutely all about money laundering, bribing, taxes, and everything else.
And the secondary effect on this, and this is why I think we need a nationwide repeal of LLCs being, this kind of opaque business structure where you can't see who's involved. I
couldn't agree more.
And I mean, you could literally just say it, any foreign money cannot, a foreign partner in an LLC must be disclosed. Period.
So wait, Hal, are you saying you want to regulate? Oh my God.
Yes, I do.
That's such a dirty word.
And it's a very simple regulation, I would say, that LLCs that own property in the United States must disclose any foreign money, foreign backing, or foreign members. That's it. Anybody who's an American, just be the fucking mystery person if you want to. You want to lie and say, you want to brag that you own an apartment in New York, but seemingly not tell anybody. That's up to you. If you're just keeping a sweet little honey up there, which is what a lot of these other assholes do it for as well. It's partly where this law came from, was rich and powerful dudes housing their woman in their mistress or something in another state or another city or wherever they're traveling, and so they could park her in an apartment that they own secondarily without their name being on it. Like, honey, why do we own this building, like this apartment, right? That's okay. So if you want to do that, that's fine. But
I don't know, because there's some good reasons why we own it. That's it.
Yes,
that's why.
That's right. Any foreign
Not because we ever
money,
go there.
right? Any foreign money, any foreign investment or foreign entity or foreign human being that is participating in an LLC must be publicly available. And if you get money, and that includes if you, whoever you are as an American, like Tenant Media, you get your money from a foreign source entirely, and you spread it around the United States, you are acting as a go-between, and so therefore you also have to be listed on that LLC. If you're the pivot point, if it's not your cash that you're saying, and it's going to show up on your taxes and your assets, then you got to list them. And if you don't, and we find out later, that's money laundering, that's a crime, just like anything else. Fuck you, go to jail, bye-bye. It seems fairly simple to me. But it would collapse
I like that. That should be,
the Trump empire.
What we should say to every one of the MAGA folks when we put them away. I like that phrase. Fuck you, go to jail, goodbye.
Yes, right. It's like we'll
that should be the final thing we say.
Like
and
a little note.
I like it.
Like just like it gets shoved across the table at the meeting with them. Like, here you go. But
just give it to their lawyer. Be like, here, read this to your client, and
right.
Good luck. Good luck.
Oh, I already told it to them.
They went great for Epstein.
I don't like them either.
Sure, they'll be wonderful.
So this is and by the way, there are multiple states, including California, that have passed or are passing, New York included, laws about ownership of real estate and foreign ownership of real estate. They and transparency on LLCs specifically for that purpose. We need that nationwide. We need that. You want to talk?
Absolutely. Again, it's the
and
opposite.
I want to see maggots argue against it. I want to see the Freedom Caucus argue against it. I want to see them stand on the floor.
I mean, we should be doing that all the time, which is, kind of like what they try to do with their. I mean, they only lie about it. They're like, oh, you believe in the abortion in the 27th trimester. And I'm like, well, only if one of my children misbehaves. Then I'm thinking about it, right? I'm kidding.
Right.
True. But, I mean, they lie about, they try to go to the extremes. And the truth of the matter is that we can go to the extremes with them because they are extremists. Yeah. And we should find some of those most blatant examples like that. And that is what we should, hit and, put them up against the wall with. Go ahead. What is it you want to do here? Who are you protecting?
I mean, the weird thing is half of these assholes, if you brought this up, if you said, do you think, LLC ownership is opaque in this country, and you can just set up an LLC in Delaware or in Nevada or in Wyoming, which is where a lot of these ones are. It can just be a post office, and who's involved in it, whether they are foreign or American, is completely hidden. Do you believe that foreign people who are trying to buy land in America through an LLC should be publicly known? Foreign entities, foreign money, that kind of stuff. Most maggots, I think, would go, fuck yeah, got to stop these Chinese from buying the roads and bridges near our military bases, right? That's where they would go. Yep. And you go, well, then pass it. Then call your congressperson and say we have to pass a law that foreigners, if they're going to buy land in the United States, they can do it. They just got to let us know. They just got to list who they are and where the money's coming from. And so we know that a foreign government isn't doing it. And they'd be like, fuck yeah. And then they would call fucking Chip Roy's office or whoever and get talked out of it by Chip Roy and his friends, because they know that if that happened, Trump is a fucking bum. In 24 hours, he's on the fucking street. People are like he'll go to, never mind the fact that they're going to unravel some of his LLCs in the next 5 years that are going to be fucking gnarly once that shit goes through.
I'm absolutely sure of it. Again, that's the thing. I mean, again, part of the desperation here, Trump is everything we've said he is. We don't have to repeat all of it, all the deep narcissism, insecurities, whatever. So that's part of the reason he obviously wants to win. And another big reason is the United States of America, kind of like what we were saying before. You get rid of some regulations, have the Saudis rent out, whole floors of hotel rooms, but never show up. A lot of it is about sort of, the grift and the money laundering and the pocketing of money and all of that. But a big part, as we all know, is because the guy is scared shitless. If we are in fact able to look and send him to prison and look into his behavior, like he, by the time they're done sentencing him, he'll have about 47,000 years of prison time.
Yeah.
I mean, quite honestly. And I think they should just go through and do it all. I don't care about the natural human lifespan. I want them to give him the number of years.
Keep him alive forever, right?
So we know that he has to reach fucking Moses' age if he's ever he's gonna be like Methuselah getting out to see to be like, the light is so bright, kind of shit.
Well, okay, so and I would also like to say, in terms of like people calling this in and this LLC thing would be the end of him. Beyond all that, is that I've said you have to chip away at the myth before the maggots leave him, and that one of the reasons why they would fight this in particular, the legislators who know him and the people around him, is because faster than anything, if maggots knew how fucking mobbed up and foreign mobbed up. We're not even talking, like when we think mobbed up in a lot of ways, we think of a guy having to pay or being involved with the Italian mob in New York to get their shit done, get their laundry done, or to be, or to get ahead. Trump is absolutely that.
Leave the gun, take the cannoli kind of mobsters.
We're talking Russian, Chinese, and Saudi money. And that money, without that money,
also
we're not even talking about this motherfucker.
If you just think about a state, because I did a lot of work, for example, on a client I had last year and trying to do, protect people in an enclave, Armenian enclave surrounded by Azerbaijan, which they invaded and ethnically cleansed, right? The leader there, remember, like the leader over there, and I don't know why his dumbass name isn't coming to me now because I've said it so many times before. But that whole family, one of them is like a singer but can't fucking sing. And Trump had a deal for a Trump Tower Baku, which is why I mentioned Baku earlier.
Oh yeah, the big vagina. Is that the big vagina? Is that the big vagina?
Yes.
Right.
It is. Yes, it is. And if you have so the point is that there's all these kleptocracies that don't even get mentioned, because they're almost not big enough next to Putin and Xi and the Saudis and what. But when you start going through parts of let's just say some of the stands, if you will, and some of those areas, and you have some of these kleptocratic leaders, not to mention really the rest of the world. He is open for business with everybody. Again, I don't know why the Trump Tower, I don't remember, Baku wasn't built, but he's in the process of making that deal, with a complete scumbag. There it is. What a beautiful building.
That's the Trump Tower vulva.
And the guy's name, by the way, is Aliyev, is the leader is the corrupt, murdering leader, of Azerbaijan. He's like son-in-law, it was like Asmarov or something of that nature. Again, it's a family business like the Trumps. I mean, when you start looking at all these places, they look very similar for a reason. It's kleptocracy, it's crony capitalism, and so if people think that even that it's just the Russian mob and it's just the Chinese mob, like it's endless. It's endless in the Department of Foreign mobsters. I'm going to go with terrorists. The group
Cartels,
that he was talking to in Azerbaijan is very closely linked to the Iranian National Guard. Terrorists, we're talking about drug lords. Just think of the worst people on earth who have money, and that's who we're talking about.
Yeah, and he doesn't care. Let's be like everybody's money is green.
Not even a concern.
Right, there is no such thing, and it's not like. I forget. There's a bunch of monies where, I think the best one is probably Deep Cover, the Lawrence Fishburne movie, which is fucking awesome. If you've never seen it, him and Jeff Goldblum. And at one point, his girlfriend, who's the money laundering woman in the, she's like is escaping essentially, and he gives her some money, and she's like, I don't want to take that. He goes, the money doesn't know where it came from. Just take it and get out of here. That's the idea. And as a kid growing up, I was always like, if you found a duffel bag full of drug money, keep it, spend it. Like it's, the idea that it's blood money or how it got isn't how it got to you. So who gives a shit, right? You do some good with it. I would become Batman, obviously. in my own way, right?
That's what again, because there's a very important reason for this. I'm not just trying to copy Hal. I gotta admit, I've got a dark side. I can't do the Superman, forgive all the bad guys. I hate you, but it's okay. We'll take you to prison. I'm gonna be some badass Dark Knight, leaving a fucking a scar on the guys who I'm taking care of.
Yeah,
That's
like Dexter with a costume. Yeah, is essentially what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yes,
and it's good to be aware of your dark side, because if you aren't, that's how it takes over. If you pretend it doesn't exist.
What I'm proud of, what I like about my dark side, and everybody, you're right, has to go and ask these questions, is my dark side is reserved for horrible people, for people that have wronged people, who are trying to destroy my country. I am completely the opposite. When I meet people, with most people, I love people. I love getting to know their story. But when you have proven yourself to be human waste, and you've proven that you will do anything, screw anybody over, harm anybody, lie about anything, particularly when you attack, any of the above, my family, my country,
vulnerable people for the sake of just doing it. Right.
And it's all also dark side at that point.
Right. I also think there's when you're aware of that, and again, I do an exercise to try and understand how to counter a lot of arguments with a sort of like, if I was evil, what would I do in this situation? Something happens, or there's a campaign coming up, and I think detectives do this, campaign people do this. Like, if I was them, how would I attack me? It's why they do opposition research.
I did as a campaign guy for years.
Right.
Exactly that.
Yeah, so there's value in that. Your ability to be able to stare your own darkness in the face and go, what would you do in this situation? And come back with the answer and use that answer for good is the key to it.
A problem for too many years, Hal, is that those on the Democratic side, still, and there's a good reason for this. Wanted good government, looked at government as a noble institution, looked at the principles that formed our Constitution, while we didn't put them all into practice, and we were imperfect now, and we're much more imperfect then, but moving in the right direction, Lockean, principles and all this of a social contract and common good. And we did all of that, but the problem is we didn't stare a little bit at our own dark sides and say, this is what these guys are doing to innocent people. And we have to understand that sometimes if you need to kick the shit out of them, whether it's a public, verbal lashing, or it's something that, whatever it may be. In fact, you and I started this conversation off. I was talking to you about this video I put out there just, recently. If people want to go check it out at
Cliff's Edge.
And it is a tour de force from Jared Moskowitz, who's got to be one of my favorite congressmen, just ripping the living shit out of James Comer on their fake impeachment with sarcasm, with salt, with, just sort of, so we're going to start the impeachment now? What are we doing? And it's so much better than that. He gets him. He's like, so do we have concepts of impeachment? Which is, of course, a terrific line. And we have Democrats now, I can name many of them, including Kamala Harris, who get it. That you don't have to become them. But when you get in a fight with people like them, you do have to fight on their level. Not hurting innocent people, but hurt directly against them, hurting them. I'm sorry. You have to say mean things about them, or if their families jump into politics like Uday and Kusei Trump there, you have to say mean things about 8-Ball McGee, Donald Trump Jr., then you have to. All right? You have to be willing to engage, and you have to be willing to channel that dark side, because otherwise what you're looking at is the 90s and the 2000s and whatever of Democrats, where we get impeached, and we get recalled, and we get a million other things. We get Supreme Court seats stolen, and the rest, because we're trying to do what's right while they are playing by an entirely different set.
We have here's what I would say is that what you're really getting at is we have a very narrow view of what right means. And it actually is broader than we would like to say. And a lot of times that it is a good impulse on the side of Democrats, especially, to go between hold on, let me make sure. Yes, Tara's waiting in the wings, and she'll be with us just 1 minute. I want to remind everybody, that's okay. Cliff Schechter, Cliff's Edge on YouTube. Please check it out and subscribe to his channel as well. You and I are kind of jockeying in the running about the same number of subscribers. We'll keep trying to kick that up as we go.
Absolutely.
You're my short form brother to my long form shit that I put out all the time. But there, within the breadth of that, if you have very strong lines, moral and ethical lines, it's a lot easier to not cross them, right? You don't have to worry about the gray. Like, I'm not going to attack when Barron is underage and not involved in the campaign.
Perfect example.
Zero. Fucking nothing.
You need to ask yourself that question and say, we're not going to become them. Barron has done nothing. Barron doesn't speak out. He's also underage or barely of age. That we are not them. We're not going to do what they do. But you have to continually ask yourself those questions, because if you're not, it doesn't mean the ends justify the means always. They often do not.
Right.
But also,
there's
if you
always
are not willing to step up and kick. Yes, if you are not willing to step up and kick some ass, if you're not willing to step up, mock, attack, I'm talking rhetorically right now, I'm not talking violently. If you're not willing to do those things, again, we lost plenty of fights preemptively because in the past, we stuck to this ethic of wanting to do the right thing, and we didn't realize that it started at, yes, Goldwater, Reagan, Nixon, you can trace it. But to me, the moment that it all changed is when they were willing to make Newt Gingrich Speaker of the House, because they knew what he was. It came from Bob Michael before, who had been this moderate from Illinois, this decent man, when there were moderate Republicans who we worked with, and he left. And when Gingrich became Speaker, it all changed. He was Trump. He was pre-Trump Trump. Okay. And when it became all about power and all about grifting and cruelty, and their party started their move in that direction, I'm sorry.
This is not new.
It took us too long to see it and to respond to it in kind.
And we don't have to. And we don't have to cross our own ethical lines to do any of this stuff. It is well within. We all have the tools of sarcasm, mockery, personal strength, and ethical boundaries that we can live within.
This is my last line I'll say on this, Hal, because I don't want to keep waiting over. But again, ask yourself also, am I willing to do this? But also ask yourself the alternative, which is, if I'm not willing to do this, if I'm not willing to say this, is it okay if more innocent people die in North Carolina because their lies spread further?
Because Laura Loomer is getting them drowned.
With my voice out there, whether it's COVID, whether it's guns, whether it's hurricanes, whether it's Springfield and Haitian immigrants, if I'm not willing to step out there and be a little bit mean to some of these people, and there's other aspects of this too, is that the morally right thing, to let more people die and suffer who didn't do anything? And so I think you need to ask yourself that question too.
Right. Agreed.
You being one, not you being Hal.
Yes, understood. Yeah, you being the Queen's you. So thanks so much, Cliff. Greatly appreciate you. Great channel, by the way.
Absolutely.
At Cliffs_Edge on YouTube. Please subscribe and share the videos around. He grabbed some of this stuff from our conversations and posted as well, so you can display those as well. This is the Hal Sparks Morning
Show. You get to promote Hal through my channel too. I mean, what more do you want in life?
Yeah, I know. I mean, come on. Me in short form, how I normally operate in the world. All right. Anyways, thanks so much, Cliff. Greatly appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Take care.
See you again. All right. Be well. Yep. And then, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring in Tara in just 1 second. I'm going to pop her in because there's so much to go on. And I have to say, I didn't get a chance, Tara Dublin, who rocks. Can you check for me and make sure I can hear you? I don't hear you. So, I don't hear your mic. So, dum. Yep, we need. I'm gonna check your audio settings and request your iPhone thing right there. Probably could you put your headphone setting in? There she is.
She is, and she's on the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, baby, yeah. So, hi.
Sure, light the lights. This is it. We'll hit the heights. Hey, Gen X, how are you doing this morning?
Yeah,
What's
we're
up?
ready.
What's up?
We're doing our thing. So I'm putting this in here real quick. I want to make sure. There you go. Okay. There's obviously a lot to talk about, but I want to.
There's always a lot. And I will also preface all that we say by the fact. First of all, why is only my head in the frame?
I'm working on it because you frame differently every time you come on the show.
My mom says I'm all grown up. My mom says I can be on the show and say my big words.
There's construction once again going on outside. Hopefully none of
we don't hear it.
Interfere.
No.
Hey, look, it's the next president of the United States being awesome.
Yes.
What you doing now?
And then the former president over here. This is Trump talking on Hugh Hewitt's show. And I don't know if you've heard this morning, but
no.
This is some
sharing the one MAGA IQ point. Okay, bring it.
How about allowing people to come to an open border? 13 1,000 of which were murderers. Many of them murdered far more than one person, and they're now happily living in the United States. You know, now a murderer, I believe this, it's in their genes, and we got a lot of bad genes in our country right now. They had 425,000 people come into our country that shouldn't be here, that are criminals. How about...
Okay, now we're so used to this dipshit being a human piece, an asshole, like just being gross and bigoted and whatever. But let's be abundantly clear. And for those that the volume was low on that, he says that murder is in their genes. Somebody is a murderer, it's in their genes.
Bad genes.
Genetics.
Johnny projection language, because every accusation is a confession. Jesus
well,
Christ.
also, it should come as no surprise that that's straight up like Karl Lenz Nazi shit.
Oh,
that
yeah.
is,
No, he's not. There's not hiding it. He was blaming every country in Africa for sending people here, except for South Africa. Isn't that right? Apartheid.
Right.
Elon.
Well, that was my point, was that all of a sudden he spends one fucking afternoon with Elon Musk, and suddenly he's super comfortable blabbing to Hugh Hewitt on the phone about how this is really a matter of genetics, that some people just have murder genes and some people, like, he's just a racist motherfucker. He always has been. But
yes, and he hangs out with people who think the way he does so that he can continue to normalize it. So that when people try it, I'm not a racist. I just read this study that said Jews are inferior.
Yes.
So, you know, that, yes, and it's continuing. And that today of all days, on October 7th, when it's such a somber day and we're thinking about all of the lives lost because Hamas terrorism and all of that that's going on, there's a very dignified ceremony happening at the White House. And you know, Donnie, who hates Jews, is at his golf club having some sort of ceremony of commemorance, but also to highlight anti-Semitism and violent rhetoric in this country. It's like it's fucking coming from inside the house.
Right.
And so, you know, it's like the irony burns white hot. I don't want your empty bullshit. Fake.
Right.
You don't like Jewish people. You're still so mad at Ivanka for marrying Jared and converting. You haven't even tried to molest her recently. Like, it's so disgusting. Like, I mean, seriously, I'm so tired of all of this blatant anti-Semitism right in front of us, and everybody saying that's not what they're doing. We have sitting members of Congress using the word money changer. It's really close. It's really close to calling Jews a Shylock. Why don't you just call us Shylock while you're at it?
Well, and they say shekels all the time too, which is really fascinating. Like, which is a Judas reference. Can I just say real quick, as somebody who's actually read the Bible twice, not and the real one, not the Trump one, and has a giant one on their desk, by the way, because I was showing it the other day. This is I have two Bibles.
Big one, Hal.
Thank you.
Show it.
I have two Bibles. I have the one that I got when I was baptized, the old-fashioned black label, gold-edged King James version that the Christian Church gives you for free. Free. Let's be abundantly clear.
For free.
You
can also download for free or read it on the internet.
You can get it out of a fucking motel fucking like nightstand for free.
They still put them in there.
And Trump wants to sell this $60 Bible, which, by the way, Oklahoma wants 50,000 Bibles for all their schools when they only have 46,000 teachers. 50,000 Bibles in all their schools, and the budget they put out is $3 million. You know how much for that many Trump Bibles cost? $3 million. And it has to have the Bill of Rights and whatever else in it. And so it's the only. It's so weird, isn't it? Okay, so this is my Masonic Bible.
Wow, you could kill somebody with that.
Yeah, I wouldn't though.
Good.
No, but this is a serious tome. Now, what I would like to say is
fancy binding. That's not good enough for Ryan Walters though.
Yeah, this is my heirloom Freemason Bible. This is the one that when they bury me with my apron on, I will pass on to my son. That said,
quick question. I have a quick question for I am not a Bible scholar. When you open the cover of a Bible, what's on the title page? Who's it attributed to?
Oh,
Is it attributed to anyone? Does
No,
anyone
it's only
get
published.
A byline? Does anyone
No,
get a
it's only
ghostwriter
published.
credit? Nope. Published.
Most of them open up with important events, which is usually when people are baptized,
Right,
and
or
then
they put your birthdays down
your
and the
genealogy
decades
and your
and
yeah, it's just
your
it was an old
grandmother's
family.
perfect
Yeah.
script.
Well, no, you just and your grandmother and your grandparents and stuff. It's like an old way of like family genealogy. It's fine.
Okay, but there's no author attributed.
No, because it was
Okay.
it was scribed by men on behalf of God. That's the idea. There's no,
Okay.
it's not authored, which is doesn't apply.
Sure. The ultimate
this,
ghostwriters. It's fine. Go ahead.
well, that was my joke. That's my thank you. That,
Great minds.
yes.
Great minds, you and
I've
I.
said-
Al. Maybe
yes.
we should hang out or something. I don't
So
know.
so the Holy Ghost was the first ghostwriter. Yeah. But the point is, in the Bible, in the Old Testament, do you have any idea how many tests? And we'll ask the chat too. How many folks? Do you know how many commandments there are in the Bible?
It's more than 10 because that sounds like a trick question.
Okay, first of all, there's two
I
sets.
have given you these 15. Oi, 10.
Oi,
10
10.
commandments.
That all. Okay, first of all, there's two different sets. There's two different sets in Deuteronomy of you can look at them. There's two different 10 commandments. They're different versions, and a lot of them have to do with kind of like a broader version and then the lesser version. Now, one more specific to the Jewish tribe, one more specific to mankind in general, right? Which is weird because again, the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States nullifies the first 5 commandments. Honor thy father and mother. You don't have to do that. You don't have to stay at home. You don't have to live at home. You can go wherever you want. You can leave the house. You can never talk to them again. You can tell them to fuck off. Freedom of speech. I'm a jealous God and there have no other gods before me. You have freedom of religion. All of those, the first 5 are all materially to your religious beliefs or your speech. You can gather with whoever you want. You can say whatever you want. And you can worship or not worship whatever God you want. That's the first 5 are nullified. The founding fathers in the First Amendment went, fuck that, fuck that, fuck that, fuck that for the
I want to
commandments.
do all the coveting of my neighbor's wife.
Well,
Saucy.
Well, that's the thing. So the other 5 are material laws that sort of get worked into stuff, into actual law that becomes later. Killing, stealing, shit like that. And coveting, interestingly enough, is very distinct in its translation from envy. Envy means I want a car like that. Coveting means I want that car. Coveting means I want a wife like that. Envy means I want a wife like that. Coveting means I want her.
That. Yep,
Yeah, and that's what's dangerous. That's fucked up. So that's why it's a mortal sin. Okay, there's 613 commandments in the Old Testament. But they're all equal to the 10, including don't eat shellfish and don't be gay and blah blah. Like they're all punishable by death. Now here's the cool part, and I don't know why it didn't occur to me to push back on this until today, but maybe it's because all this stuff has come up about the Trump Bible, and I've been rereading parts of it again and that kind of stuff to try to like familiarize myself with the parts they're unfamiliar with. But when Jesus came, the entire point was that there was a new covenant. And the new covenant is Jesus's rules versus the old rules. Instead of an eye for an eye, it's turn the other cheek. And there was a very distinct difference of how you treated the poor and the lesser among you under Jesus's covenant and what the Old Testament said. The Old Testament was like, kind of fuck them. If they're there on your land, you should run them off and take their women, and you can have kids with the women if they're attractive, but if not, you can always sell them to somebody else and that kind of shit. That's Old Testament shit. New Testament was like, nope, sorry. If somebody comes over and they're hungry, you got to help them out, right? Now, there are some elements that stuck around, but that was up to Jesus. That's the whole point. The new covenant is he makes the new rules, which means that putting the 10 Commandments on public grounds or in front of a school or something is saying, fuck you, Jesus Christ. That's what that means. It's saying the new covenant is meaningless. Let's go back to the old covenant. And I want to hear an evangelical explain that shit to me.
Well, because we're all sinners. We're all sinners and and we're a Christian nation is what they think. But that's
Well,
not
then,
true.
then it should
We're
be
not-
the Sermon on the Mount. Then it should be
What do you want me
Jesus'
to tell
covenant.
you? This
I
isn't
want
my
you to
big
tell
deal.
me what they would say.
I think it's all a giant pile of hunk of bullshit, okay? You know that. I think the Bible is a crutch in book form. That's what I think. And I think that
Right.
people cherry pick it like they do the Constitution. I'm the wrong person to ask him.
This isn't, I'm telling you, this isn't
anyone-
about cherry picking. This is about
No, but-
a cherry tree versus a thorn bush covered in leeches that spit acid. There's a huge
on
difference.
fire that talks.
That hates gays and that's on fire. Right, that's right. That's the
Like,
difference
it's
between these two
all
trees.
Just again, if you want to read it for entertainment like you do the Greek myths, that's one thing. But I find it's not
Whoa.
really smart to take
Wait a second.
antiquated texts.
First of
and
all,
make that your base for reality. in
I do not
2024.
read the Odinic mythology of my ancestors like it's Lord of the Rings. God damn it!
I'm
I happen to
sorry if I
happen to
offended
think it was
Zeus.
true before the update. So I think the
Come on now.
simulation. No, the
Hey,
simulation
again,
we live in
again.
got an update at one point, and before that we did have dragons, and they were like, "Fuck this dragon bullshit." Can somebody?
No,
can somebody
I'm just saying. If
I want to
you
walk
think-
around. Right.
Again, I'm a reality-based life form. I
Cool.
deal with what I can see and hear and feel and touch and smell and whatever. And I don't believe in any invisible sky forms taking care of our business for us. That's just me, though. And again, if you want to do that, I'm okay with it, but do not use public funds to do
Right.
it. The fact that Ryan Walters is using Oklahoma taxpayer money to help Donald Trump launder MAGA grift money, like it's a whole great big grift. It's
Yep.
all part of the MAGA grift.
Well,
And
here's
it
the other
shouldn't
thing,
be
though, and this
allowed.
is the good question.
Shouldn't be
So
allowed, and where is Secretary Cardona? Because
you believe
the
genes? You believe genes are real, right?
genes?
Yeah.
Like genetics?
Genetics, yes.
Yeah. Oh, so
Right.
are we talking about creationism versus
No, we're
evolution?
talking about Darwinism, a form of nihilistic Darwinism that was used by Carl Lenz, the Nazi geneticist,
Right,
versus
right.
the moral impact of a human being, like self-determination versus genetic predisposition.
Okay.
Donald Trump,
Well,
right, and self-determination is in the realm of philosophy, and and you could have philosophical
correct.
realism about it, but if we discovered, here's the thing, if you and I were part of a scientific team and we discovered that there was a gene for being a murderer, what you and I would do is try to find a genetic cure for that so that people could get inoculated against being a murderer. Doesn't mean they won't murder somebody later because they just decide to, but they won't be compulsively forced to do it by any genetic thing. If we really discovered, you and I,
right.
Donald Trump believes right now, not possibly, that murder is in your genes if you've done it already, and that if you have, you should be murdered.
No. Again, no one is born like that. No one is born hating anyone or believing anything. You're not predestined to be a murderer based on your innate biology. It's ridiculous. So he clearly, and you and I have talked about this repeatedly
Right.
on your show, that he just spews the last thing someone poured into his
Yes.
dumb, addled brain.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
if Elon Musk believes in eugenics and believes in creating a white world,
It's
for
exactly what it
everybody,
is.
then Donald Trump does now too. But give him a couple of days, and then someone else will say something else, and he'll believe that instead. So again,
No,
so
he'll
when
stack.
You have two white
See, I don't think you
supremacists
were-
on a stage together.
Yeah.
Achtung, baby. Then you get Butler, which was crazy, bananas.
Holy shit. Yeah.
Like
gross.
The only thing missing from that was lighting Nazi flags on fire and him screaming like the end of
Right.
Raiders of the Lost Ark with their faces
like it was
melting.
Jimi Hendrix doing a guitar solo. Yeah.
And Musk jumping up and down like he was a fish on a hook, and just all of
So
it was
weird.
house crazy. And the look on his face when he was like supplicating himself to Donald Trump, where he was like, "Yes, master." It was everything about it was fucking ludicrous. And again, I just, how do people look at that and go, yep, I'm all in. I am all in. Thank you for making me come back to the scene of a traumatic shooting. Thank you for making me come back here for a
Right.
photo opportunity and political theater with all of this manufactured fake ass sympathy and using a dead man, using Corey Comparator's dead, his jacket,
They're paintings
using his
of him
wife
and
as political
Jesus.
props. And then I also read about some grift where the Trump campaign sent out fundraising emails says, want to be on stage with Trump at his Butler rally? And all of these people send money. Did you see anybody else on stage besides Elon Musk and JD Vance? I didn't. Or anybody else associated with the campaign? No. The grift
Right.
is endless. They will promise you the moon and the stars. Donald Trump stood on that stage and said, we're going to be going to Mars by the end of his term. Bullshit, we are.
Yeah.
Why don't the two of you get on a rocket and try now, like the Titan went underwater but
Yeah.
in space? Get on there with sissy SpaceX, the two of you. Go ahead. Go try it. You want, if that's what you want. You don't like this planet anymore, but bye. Get in the rocket if you think it's so safe, Leon. I'm so sick of this bullshit. We're we're less than a month now from Election Day, and they're out there having their Nazi propaganda rally in front of everybody like that. And we're just over here going, hey,
See,
here's normalcy.
okay.
Here's
Yeah, so
normalcy over
couple
here.
of things. One is what I was trying to point out was this weird crisscross, this this absolute cognitive dissonance between the multitude of ideas that they supposedly are, that we're a Judeo-Christian nation, which just means you want to be able to pick and choose from both. That's what that means. They want to go eye for an eye when they want to sound tough and magnanimous, when turn the other cheek when when the local football team quarterback is busted for sexual assault and they need him to win the big game on Sunday. You know what I mean? Like they pick and choose. That's the cherry picking that you're talking about. Meanwhile, this idea that Donald Trump speaks to Elon Musk for an afternoon and suddenly feels okay to just say out in the open that I believe murder is in your genes and we got people with bad genes in the country. Which, by the way, how is that not an argument for abortion on a bunch of fronts? Because if you believe abortion's in your genes, then at what point are you not going to force sterilization on women convicted of murder in jail who may ever or been convicted of child abuse or are genetically inferior, whatever? Like that's where that leads. It's where it led with the Nazis. They didn't softball into it like you have to now. But this is right now. He is riding both sides of this razor blade. With his ass right in the middle. And I have to say that most of it, especially at this thing in Butler, sounds both exhausted and desperate. Because on the one hand, he's not into it, but on the other hand, like this is the kind of stuff when you're scrambling to try and get back certain voters or whatever to go that racist. And by the way, there is no crypto bro that is not involved in the new eugenics. Modern eugenics, like the idea that there are superior whites and inferior everybody else's and all that kind of stuff. And by the way, there's superior blacks and inferior everybody else's. Remember, the FBI said the second worst group in the country after the white supremacist gangs, and it's largely by number, is like the Black Hebrew Israelites and the Moors and the Uhuru movement or whatever, who had a dead guy in their fucking living room for 3 days that they tortured to death, and sodomized and all this other stuff because he was going to snitch and blah. Like there's enough bad to go around in those regards, but the superior orthodoxy is antithetical to democracy, and supremacy is antithetical to democracy. Anybody who believes that they're superior or have a pure religious orthodoxy, it can't believe that anybody else can share in government and in control of the government, of how things run. And that's what Elon Musk thinks. That's what Donald Trump thinks.
And of course, if they think that anybody melanated is inferior and that women are inferior, then a black woman being president of the United States is absolutely out of the realm of anything they can accept. And so that's why they're leaning into the public, whatever, their base fear. Now look at the way Elon Musk was raised. He was raised by a racist who, made his money from blood diamonds and all of that, has no regard for human life. And so it's really, really easy. And the fact that the two of them are owned by Putin, it's like they have, let's like finding it like stepbrothers, like they found each other late in life, and now are they best friends? I think they are.
Yeah,
so
right.
It literally, they might as well be sharing a bunk bed somewhere because they are cut from the same cloth.
We'll have so much more room for activities. Right.
But they're cut from the same disgusting cloth, which is the unloved children of billionaire parents who were so fucking selfish and self-involved that they couldn't be bothered to raise their children appropriately. And so that's how you get a family like the Musks and a family like the Trumps. And those are the bad genes because they have been, I mean, whatever their genetics are, that's one thing. But it's also nature nurture, and that they were raised in hate. They were raised in racism. They were raised to believe they were superior because you're white, because you have money, because you're a man. Whatever those reasons were are all manufactured bullshit reasons. And so that's how you get the overcompensation and how we end up with Donald Trump in the White House for 4 years because we're the victims of a lifelong revenge fuck. It's not fair. Like, it's not, we shouldn't have to be responsible for their bad self-feelings. They were born on third base, but they think they hit a triple because people have been blowing smoke up their asses their entire lives. And it's really like, we're finally, thank you, New York Times, for finally telling the truth about Donald Trump this weekend, because they wrote about his, his cognitive decline. And this is where, you really have to start talking to people as loudly and truthfully as possible. Like, it's fucking crazy to believe that you were superior because you look like Hal instead of Barack Obama. It's crazy to think that you're superior because
no one thinks
your
that.
I'm just saying, it's the appearances and whatever, that you've been raised to believe white man is the highest level of consciousness that you can achieve on this earth. No. And again, for me, and again, it sounds naive, but the principles that we were talking about earlier at the base of Jesus's teaching and any religious teaching is live and let live. And they can't. And they can't.
Right.
And that's how we get here, because nobody can mind their own parts. They're so busy worrying about what other people are doing with theirs. And just, like Tim Wall says, mind your own damn business. Keep your head down and keep going. It'd be a totally different country if people could do that. But 4 weeks out of an election, they're going to do all kinds of crazy, hinky shit. And we have to be the ones going, that is crazy. That is hanky. Yeah. And here's normalcy.
And
normalcy
it's shit.
Is sitting down with 60 minutes, not avoiding 60 minutes.
You're right.
Like if you're Trump and you think you're the best candidate and you won the election in 2020, you got nothing to hide, you're innocent and transparent, you believe all of these things that are going on with all your heart, you should be sitting down with 60 minutes. Even though they're going to fact check him in real time, he'll say, this is what I believe, these are my beliefs, this is my core belief. He can't talk like that. And the reason they originally agreed to 60 minutes and then turned it down because he was going to get fact checked.
Right.
So if you could just look at what they are doing.
Right.
On they're telling us what they're doing and they're showing us. So it's just like how can you pretend that they're not?
Yeah, I mean, there's a weird move of, and I think this has to do with sort of like the vaccine world as well. And I was talking with Cliff in the last hour about how there's a direct overlap between the anti-vax crowd and the anti-FEMA crowd right now. That's kind of like, but it's a more acute emergency, so they're directly responsible for the deaths than this kind of soft like. There's an intervention between. Maybe you could have heard something else between when you heard that and when you caught the disease. But when a flood's coming, a fucking flood's coming, and you don't really have a lot of time to be a dumbass. And on a lot of these folks, I think Loomer is directly responsible for a bunch of people dying, but she doesn't give a fuck because she's tweeting these things from the warm side of a bay window at Mar-a-Lago.
It's horrible.
And a bunch of these people are. Like, you talk about the people who are, like, bitching about this stuff. They're not anywhere near the fucking damage. They're doing it because Twitter's a window, and they're being fed this load of shit by Elon Musk, specifically to drive up what he thinks is voter anger / turnout. He's decided that the algorithm, people vote because they're angry or afraid, so the whole thing is about getting them more angry and more afraid. That's the goal.
And by the way, no one can control the weather. What in the actual fuck? We all know Marjorie Taylor Greene is dumber than, just anything. Mm-hmm. But a sitting member of Congress saying that we can control, they can control the weather. Who, Marjorie? Who's controlling
Right.
the weather?
Well,
I mean,
clearly
it's
the
just-
Democratic
it's full on
establishment that's been running the
irresponsible.
government, except when Trump was president for 3 years, and then they started running it in his last year. And anytime in between when he didn't get anything done, it was because they were actually running things. And then he took over running things when the tax break was passed. But then he stopped running things while he was busy golfing for a year and being a racist prick. And then he went back to like this idea that and they have fallen back. I've noticed this. I don't know if you've seen this too, because you're still on the shitter and you're fighting the good fight on the front lines of shitter. Is how many of these people are falling back to near flat earth level? It's an Illuminati conspiracy. They run everything.
Big
And
time.
the they part of it has blossomed since Alex Jones. It's almost like, like the Russians went, okay, if we can't funnel this all through Alex Jones, we'll just have a lot of little satellite fuckers yelling about the they Illuminati shit everywhere. We'll give them $50 everywhere instead of $1 billion in one spot.
They really, I mean, it's unreal. And if I tweeted, you can't, no one can control the weather. Because if anyone could control the weather, it'd be 72 degrees and sunny all over the planet all the time. Because that's the ultimate best weather ever. But that people come back with and they show me bullshit things. Well, cloud seeding. Cloud seeding is when there's a drought and then they go in there and they try to force it to rain in this one specific area. It doesn't cause hurricanes, you dumb fucks. And no one is like a James Bond villain with a weather machine. Joe Biden isn't sitting there with a weather machine under the Resolute desk going, fire, weather,
Right.
thunder. Like in the Bugs Bunny cartoon where the thunder, lightning, smog. It's not like that. It's not like that.
Right.
You can't do that. It doesn't exist. It's not real.
You sure that?
Please. Like, it's enough.
I don't know.
We're destroying our own country.
I think you're selling Jewish space lasers short, or you're refusing to take responsibility, Jewess, for what you guys have been doing to the atmosphere.
I want you to know that I called Marjorie on that day, and I was like, I just want you to know that my Jewish space laser doesn't control the weather. Like, it's just, it's so ridiculous. Can I just... Again, I have to reiterate, we can't control the weather. We don't control the media. We don't run the banks. George Soros has never paid me a dime. They're worried about George Soros buying up some radio stations. This is apparently the newest thing. Okay, conservative AM talk radio everywhere across the country, dominating the AM airwaves because you hate the truth. I have been trying to pitch a liberal talk show here in Portland forever and ever, and I was told it's not profitable. But if George Soros wants to back one, hi, I'm right here. I've been waiting for my checks since 2015. Let's fucking go.
How would it not be profitable? I mean, obviously, I think the biggest problem with Portland is that it's so far left in some cases, or it's surrounded by what I would call faux-gressives, that they would, if you were insufficiently, liberal or whatever, they would storm the station while you're just trying to talk about good tax policy that betters, the lives of children. That's the problem in Portland, not the other way around. Of course, it's profitable.
It's the problem nationally, because in the 90s we had Air America, which was the front runner and gave us most of the people on Sexy Liberal and people connected to Sexy Liberal.
I was a fill-in host.
And there you go. And Rachel Maddow and all of these great people who found their voice through Air America and now are doing that with podcasts or TV shows or blogs or whatever. But there's absolutely a market for liberal talk shows because they're all over satellite. They're on Sirius. They're podcasts. I don't know why radio hasn't tried to capitalize it, but then again, yes, I do, because all of the wrong people are in charge of radio, which I learned myself because I was on the radio here 20 years ago. And I saw the rise of the internet, and I begged my bosses to start streaming in like 2006. And they're like, why would we want to do that? And I'm like, because the internet's not going away. And if you could learn how to harness it, we could make bajillions. What do I know how? I'm just a girl. So,
you have to understand, I'm the one who talked Marianne Williamson into getting Marianne.com back in the day, and I bought HalSparks.com and have had it since 1993 because I was like, because then I'll be able to put my acting demo reel on the internet and people will watch it instead of having to mail VHS tapes, which is very expensive. And everybody's like, you fucking nerd, and I was like, it's true.
You know what's so great, though? One of the things that I miss about being on the radio from back in the day, the late 90s, the early 2000s, is when record companies still cared and they would send the CD single with swag to
Yes.
promote, and you would get little bobbleheads, or you'd get cool little fun trinkety.
I still have the Judas Priest painkiller pill that had a T-shirt in it that had Judas Priest painkiller on it, and I'll find it someplace. I've got it. Yeah, it might be. It's actually at the studio in L.A. because I keep it there. It's kind of a trophy.
I have a whole box of swag from my time on the radio, but one of my favorite pieces of swag was actually from my first radio job in Augusta, Georgia, when the Breeders dropped the album with Cannonball, and the follow-up single to Cannonball, for anybody who's Gen X and digs early 90s alternative, the follow-up was a song called Divine Hammer, which was also the name of the album. And so when they were promoting the Divine Hammer single, they sent out a rosary bead that had a hammer on it instead of a cross. And peeps got mad. They got so mad at the Breeders. And there were radio stations that wouldn't play the follow-up single because they were offended. I still have my Divine Hammer rosary beads.
That's awesome.
Which is awesome, right? And
right.
Back in August, before we learned things, and I was hoping to get back in touch with Dave Grohl, I was going to give him the Divine Hammer rosary to give to his daughter Violet, because the Breeders are her favorite band.
Wow.
So I was going to do that, but maybe what you could do is invite Dave to the Nerd Halen show you're going to have in LA the night before Sexy Liberal.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
It's something that Caleb and I can conspire if you can't get involved. But
I'm for it.
But anyway, back in the day when radio people cared, we possibly could have pitched something like Air America, and it could still be a thing today. But radio people don't care as much anymore, and I don't know why. There's a guy named Lars Larson who is like a horrific MAGA person, and he broadcasts from about 5 minutes from where I'm sitting. On the other hand, you have Tom Hartman, who also broadcasts from about 20 minutes.
Yeah, but Tom Hartman does it again. A lot of those folks, they like Tom Hartman, just like Steph. So Steph, at one point, Bain Capital bought a bunch of progressive stations all over the country, and I'm on WCPT in Chicago largely because it's one of the few that remained private, wasn't sold to Bain Capital's investors at one point, who immediately, even though they were losing money, which is a violation of their fiduciary duty to their investors, turned all these things into The Patriot. And in Los Angeles, there's no fucking audience for it. It loses money all the fucking time, but it makes them money. You know how? Tax breaks. It makes them money because it's basically, they write it off as a marketing expense for right-wing political views. And so they, if they go, well, this is kind of pro-corporate, that's why it helps me. I may not get cash from it, but it works because it changes minds. It doesn't at all. But that's how they can say it. And what it does do is underinform people in the general area. And all we're left with in LA, for example, is KPFK, and there's KPFA up in San Francisco, which is where Democracy Now! And those guys are, whatever. It's just very local, so smaller than NPR kind of shit. And they've and it's so fucking sad that the second attack was getting Democracy Now! To be to just fold in fucking half and buy into this idea that it's a toss up whether Harris or Trump is better for Gaza. It's first of all, the fucking calling Palestinians in that area both a cancer and the problem, and that Netanyahu has to get it over quickly and move on. It sounds like fucking turning it into a parking lot to me. It doesn't sound like a measured approach that cares about human life at all. But his genetics bullshit should seal the fucking deal. How does that apply to Muslims from certain parts of the world? Let's not even talk about who he thinks are Mexicans crossing the border that he thinks are just murderous, and you can tell by their fucking face, because that's what he's talking about. You can look at their face and you can tell they're murderers. Fuck this dude. So speaking in those terms, I want to show you something real quick. This is Boston Brian. I saw your remark in there. This is Boston Brian pointed this out. Trump asks if there's anyone in the crowd voting for Kamala Harris, and this woman right here who's been doing the Hail Mary, sees a black guy with a beanie and points at him as he's leaving.
Oh my God!
That guy.
There's one.
Mm-hmm. Who's voting?
African-American right over there.
Yep, and she's like, that guy. And these are, and again, there's a bunch of people that are leaving, for a bunch of reasons, but And by the way, this is after like some white Trump supporters beat up a black Trump supporter in line at one of his other rallies. Fuck.
How are there black Trump supporters? It just doesn't. I mean, how are there any? But again, if you're a minority of any kind, if you're a woman, if you have any melanin in your skin, how do you support this party that doesn't see you as a full human being? I don't understand it. I don't. They are aggressively trying to make you believe that Democrats don't help you and they're going to help you when they're not going to do fucking shit for you. And
well, no.
Won't even...
You have to understand, Tara. What they're saying is that it's the help that's the problem.
Oh,
but
I see.
yeah,
It's wrong
Democrats.
To help.
Yeah,
okay.
Democrats by trying to right the wrongs of the past or even things out so that people get a shot to compete on an even playing field has created a culture of dependency in the black community, and none of them have any gumption to rise up. And if you don't believe me, ask 50 Cent and fucking,
Sure. Okay.
Oprah they've lost their will to live.
When 7 million people need to be evacuated from Florida because Milton has been upgraded to a category 5, does it matter what color somebody's skin is when you're trying to not die in a category 5 hurricane? Doesn't it?
Well, no, but that's an immediate emergency. This is long term, and this is something you've got to deal with. You've got to bootstrap yourself because hunger's a great motivator. Remember, like that's what these fuckers. I'm not
drowning in your own home. So,
I gotta say, I'm not kidding about the long-term aspect of this. The reason is they have been appealing to this bro science bullshit that is big. That's why they hired the fucking Hodge twins, and who are like these, twin black guys who are all like buffed out, who used to do like workout videos and relationship advice bullshit. Now they're the conservative twins, right? And they're doing. I'm serious, and they're both black, and they both talk shit about Democrats all the time.
Make a lot of money doing it.
They have never done better. They are giving away cars on their stream now.
Sure,
that like
great.
no,
That's
there's
That's
absolutely
great. And where'd that money come from? Grift. It's nothing but a grift, and it's.
But they've aimed at that crowd. They've aimed at a specific group of dudes, which includes a certain level of black dudes that are in this kind of bro science workout, ivermectin, Joe Rogan, zone.
Sake. But Kamala Harris should go sit down with Joe Rogan for an interview is something that I've been seeing. Just shut up with all of this.
I think Trump should. There's a reason.
Just jerk each
there's
other
a reason.
Kamala Harris doesn't have to sit down with Joe Rogan.
I'm telling you, that won't happen. If Trump sits down with Joe Rogan will have a fucking panic attack while this dude's sitting across from him at his decaying brain. It will not be a mutual jerk fest, because one thing about Rogan, and he's a complete asshole, is that he cannot hide his disdain for a guest or what a guest says, even if he wants to. Even when he's selling stuff, he likes to be the guy who says, I don't know, maybe on a bunch of topics. That's one of the selling points of his show to his viewers. And you're not allowed to do that with Trump. And maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, he could have sat with Trump when he was gacked out on something and they could just jerk off about stuff. But now, I guarantee if Trump sat across from Joe Rogan and Joe Rogan watched them walk him into the fucking studio and everything that they've been shitting on Biden for is totally true about Trump, and he heard them like that he won't do it live and they have to cut it to pieces, like when he talks to fucking people in these on-air interviews, unless he's on the phone, in which case they can fucking 7-second dump it, which is what they do. In all those situations, like Rogan will sit there because he's not a good actor. He will sit there and go, "Oh my fucking God, this guy's falling apart." I mean, it's why he saw.
That's why I want them to sit down and talk to each other.
Right. Yes.
So
that's what I mean.
Trump won't do it. So who's Trump got left to sit down and talk with? Because Fox News is telling the truth about him. He's got Newsmax.
Benny
left?
Johnson. He'll be on Tim Pool.
Right. All the people actors who are going to go to prison.
Right.
So that's
all the
great.
tenant media people who are doing cleanup and then have to do like a big fucking mea culpa or an apology or a correction afterwards, going, actually, I don't believe the election was fit. All the things that are in that. that make them guilty later. Oh, it's so fucking good.
Or he keeps doing those bullshit town halls in the high school gyms because he can't have a proper rally if he doesn't bring Elon Musk with him. So,
And by the way, I don't doubt that Rogan isn't offering a full-throated, like, come on the show to Trump, because he would have to do it to Harris or look like a wuss, but also because Trump can't do it. And so, and he knows it. And if he comes on, it'll be horrible. And so better to not even have the offer on the table, because everybody will go, why is he turning Rogan down? Wouldn't Rogan be great? Like all of his followers who are still smoking their own stash.
So then the spin becomes, he's not going to go on Rogan because he knows Kamala won't go on Rogan. Or he won't say yes to a Fox News debate because he knows Kamala won't do it. And then Kamala's like, I'll debate you on Fox News. He's like, no, actually, no. So... And meanwhile, this week, she's going to be everywhere. She already did Call Her Daddy, which was fantastic. Mm-hmm. Fantastic interview, targeted directly at Gen Z, which super motivated to vote for her already. And she goes on Call Her Daddy and says all of this truthful stuff, and it was awesome. It was a great interview. It showed everybody who she really is, and she had great answers. And people who think it was not a big deal don't understand how big of a deal it was, because it's the second most popular podcast on the planet. So if you think about how many people who normally wouldn't pay attention, and Alex Cooper prefaced it by saying, I normally don't do this, and I extended an interview to Trump, but I haven't heard back from him, and if he does, that's great. But it's really important because she talks about women, and her podcast is about women and sexuality and reproductive rights and all of those things that matter. So she's already done that. She's going to be on 60 Minutes tonight after the Trump campaign turned it down. Tomorrow she's going to be on The View, Howard Stern, and Stephen Colbert. Yep. And then later in the week, she's got a Univision town hall, which will be huge because she'll be able to talk directly to Latino voters that Donald Trump thinks he's got sewn up, which he does not. Right. So it's going to be an amazing week for the Harris-Walz campaign, and it'll be interesting to watch the Trump-Vance campaign try to compete with that, because they can't.
Right.
They can't. Again, Donald Trump hasn't been ahead in a poll in about 2 weeks now. Mm-hmm. So I don't see.
And even those are like Rasmussen or any of those other ones. Arizona and Georgia, by the way, if you're in Arizona and Georgia and you're listening to the sound of our voice, today is your last day to register to vote. Make sure you're registered to vote. You can do it at the DMV. You can do it. I will vote.org or .com. Vote.org is plenty. Vote.gov will also help you, but vote.org has always been super helpful. You can check your registration, you can find out your polling place, all that kind of stuff. Vote.org works every time. Make sure, just check. And if you're worried in an area and you know the deadline is coming up, in some states you don't have a deadline. You can do same day registration in California most of the time, for example. Other states you're going to be fine. But if you're in a state where they have a deadline 2 weeks before, in the next, there's a list of them. Somebody is posting online, like the daily, what those, when the limit is. State. But you can find out on vote.org. You can look on Twitter. There's a bunch of people posting the memes of when everybody's final, the last day to register is. And Osborne, thank you so much. Who says, he was saying earlier, what is it? I have to find where it went by. It was like, floods are coming, but the ivermectin of floods is mudslides. Just wait for it to come; it'll be fine. So one of the things that is making the rounds is this little story. Yes, we touched on this a little bit, and I also wrote about it for HillReporter.com. Finally, why don't you wait a little longer, New York Times? And I also responded to Peter Baker, who was one of the authors of that article, and I was like, I'm so glad that you finally stopped sane washing him. Can you make sure you don't go back? Because we can't go back to the sane washing after you read an article like this that really points out how much he has declined. And it's not just the thing about that article, and people are like, ugh, it's not a cult of personality article where it's like, he's crass or he's an ingrate. They don't insult Trump the person. What they do is describe the behavior and what he says, and just they pinpoint, this is off, this is wrong. He seems oddly fixated on the past, talking about the 1890s and the 1900s and repeating this and repeating that. And it's the behavioral pattern that they speak to in that piece. And I think it's really important that everybody read it for what it is. Which also, is a factual description of his real behavior. Right. So I don't like flies. You know, they're totally saying.
Yeah, well, if you didn't smell like shit, you wouldn't attract
Right.
flies.
Yeah. Don't shit yourself. That'll solve it. Yeah.
Somebody
One of the
wiped
things.
his ass, and then you know.
So there's a few things that come up, and that point about the 1800s that he brings up. I want to be abundantly clear. This goes back to sort of like him talking about genetics now that he's spoken to Leon Musk. Yeah. The whole thing about the tariffs in the 1890s and blah, 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 is that he just found out that before we had an income tax, that was our primary way of funding the government. And apparently they skipped the part where if that's how you do it, all other countries have to do is cut off your shipping lanes and your people starve to death. So an income tax is necessary. That's why all modern countries do it in one form or another who aren't fucking stupid or have a big enough economy that you could give a shit. There are a bunch of countries that don't have income tax, but they don't have any income either. So there you go. But that said, somebody just told him the fucking Cliff Notes version of McKinley's, blue ribbon committee on what to do with all the money we're getting from tariffs. It's fucking amazing. When we were an industrial powerhouse before the Industrial Revolution, we had all these wood chairs building up and everybody needs a chair to sit on. So the world wanted our chairs. And boy, we were flush with fucking cash. You're like, asshole,
it's a stool boom. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe that's what caused the flies. So, but it's clear that he gets like the Cliff Notes of one of these things and thinks he's all of a sudden an expert on it. Like, most people don't know Lincoln was a Republican. Shit. He goes, right?
Most people have never heard of a phone app. They don't know what it is.
Right. Yeah. I don't
What's
know
that,
the hell
Papa?
Yeah.
Harris. What name? No one knows Harris. If I say Harris, they say, who was Harris?
The leader of North Korea is trying to kill me. Oh, really? I thought you guys fell in love. What the fuck happened? You mean Iran?
Papa.
Oh, wait, sorry. Bagrams in Alaska? Like, again, if you, I think, if anything, Lincoln Project, myself, I'm working on one that I'm putting together. This, like a compilation just all over the internet of his just weird fucking flubs. Not just words that he mangles, but ideas that he fucks up. That Bagrams in Alaska and those kind of things, or that we were going to stay in Afghanistan. All that shit. We should keep the oil.
Iron Dome.
Yeah, that we're gonna have
put over the United States to protect us. I think
he
thinks it's an
one.
Iron Dome, like when you get room service. It's one of those domes.
It's a cloche.
Put over the
it's
country.
a cloche. That's called it. Yes, it's called
a cloche over the whole United States to protect us from brown people and attacks.
Well, and my question is that why do they want to put a cloche between us, the American people, God's chosen country, and God's cloche, which is also called the firmament that proves the earth is flat, and the sky is just painted on it?
Well, they would make the cloche big enough to include the sky in it.
Sure, you'd paint a new sky outside of it.
They could paint the top of the cloche, the inside of the cloche.
With a big, beautiful moon, so much better than the old moon.
They make it like the Simpsons clouds, so that when people looked up, they'd be like, oh. So anyway.
Yeah. So ultimately,
the Trumpies.
Right.
Anyway.
He is more and more. And again, is he aging and gacked up on drugs? Yes. Is he doing a lot of rallies because he's panicked and needs the attention? And they're basically selling shit. They're selling merch at all these events. Like, if you go to a Trump rally right now, you'll get handed a Trump coin, a Trump Liberty fucking bank DeFi thing. These are recruitments for his other products as well. So it's like if a band got to do the festival circuit, never had to bring their own audience, but could sell merch to everybody there, right? Who wouldn't sign up for that, right? That's what's going on. But if you suck and you realize this is just a merch grift, you're going to walk out halfway through. That's what his audience is doing. This is a merch grift. This band sucks, and I'm not even sure I like the merch, and out they go. But he's panicking and doing a bunch of these rallies, and he's definitely wearing down. But I think he's drunk. I'm just going to say it. I know he always says he never drank, and he's never going to drink.
But
and
he's a liar.
He's a fucking liar, and I think
he has
somebody
a spiked Diet Coke. I think that's what it is. His Diet Coke cans are spiked because if you notice, he doesn't drink Diet Coke out of a glass. He always drinks it out of the can. You can put
can't
anything
see what's
in that
in it?
can.
Is Diet
Put
Coke
anything
clear?
in that can.
Right. But also, I really do think, like, he surrounds himself with these fucking, robber baron style oligarch assholes that he golfs with, and they're always drinking bourbon and whatever. And you can, and they're like, just give it it's not that bad. Just taste it. You'll see what I mean. And he's like, oh, that's terrible. Like, put a little more sugar in it, and then he'll drink it. Like, add
it to your Diet Coke, you ingrat.
And I gotta say, I honestly think he started nipping at the bar in the plane. Maybe when nobody's looking, maybe he's hiding it from staff. Maybe he thinks he's hiding it from staff. I don't think he's drinking enough where his skin reeks of it. He's not drunk all the time. He's getting a little sauced before some of these speeches because
and the alcohol's interacting with whatever drugs he's on, and so that makes it worse because you're not supposed to drink alcohol if you're taking any medication.
And so what's one of the reasons somebody would start drinking at this age after not drinking a lot? Untreated PTSD.
It's fucking miserable.
Well, that too. Untreated PTSD. Now, I got news for you. Most presidents suffer PTSD in office. That's why they age so fucking fast. That's what happened to Biden over time, ultimately.
I mean, you don't sleep. You just don't get enough sleep. You don't get enough rest. You're
right, and everything is a panic, and you're hearing horrible, horrible things happening in the world, and you're seeing closer views of it than even, than everybody but the people that were there.
Yeah,
like that.
Right
Trump didn't. Trump didn't because he's a fucking sociopath. He aged after because all the stuff that's panicking him happened after he left office. His trials, his fucking lack of money coming from the Russians and other people. If he doesn't start getting that flowing again, he's going to have to start selling properties. That's what stresses him out, and that's clearly what did it. And it also puts him in a panic that I got to get it back. I got to get it back.
Right.
Fuck anything. I don't care.
Yeah, and he kept the same schedule when he was in the White House. Like, he wouldn't come downstairs before 11 a.m. sometimes. So he was making them bend to his schedule rather than adapting to what the schedule of a president demands.
That's
he didn't care. He didn't want to do the job. He just wanted to be a figurehead.
He wanted the title.
That's right. And so now it's like everything is just caught up to him all at once, and his whole body is just turned into this like exhausted meat sack that can't hold up anything anymore, and his leg is weird, and maybe he had a TIA and we don't know it because they don't tell us anything. We've never seen a long form medical report. He also wasn't shot. He was shot at. Put that out there. But again, it's not, I think part of it is like his decline began then, but it really increased after Kamala became the nominee, and he was like, fuck, I'm gonna lose. And so
to a brown lady. Not just it's like if Obama was a chick, it's like his worst nightmare.
Of course it is. And the consequences that he's facing are getting more real by the day.
Yeah.
He's not really enjoying the October surprise from Judge Chutkan and Jack Smith.
No.
He's really not enjoying that. So when you have the
and more to come. 2 weeks, there's going to be more of that shit. More. The appendix is coming out with all the actual annotated annotated evidence in it. It's fucking hell.
While we are focused on the fact that he's getting sentenced on 34 felony charges on November 26th, there's 54 more that he's facing after that. He's, besides the Jack Smith January 6th stuff, he's still in trouble in Georgia. Remember Fonnie Willis? I certainly do. So, and there's more shit coming. There's more shit coming his way, which means there's more shit coming for you, MAGA kids.
Don't get me started on the beautiful joy that is waiting for all of us. And you can just ask Martha Stewart what the SEC trials will be like about the funding of Truth Social through the SPAC, which was all insider trading level shit. And his fucking DeFi finance thing that is run by those guys who just got hacked for $2 million in the app they created, and basically, I know it's that. I gotta say, he's looking as much time for Truth Sinkhole and his DeFi scheme that he's doing right now as anything else. Like this motherfucker keeps adding extra time because he's like, well, if you're going through hell, keep going. I can't do more than 20 years anyway. So if I get 1,000 years, who gives a shit? That's what he's thinking.
Who gives a shit, right? It's a ceremonious thing. And also you need look no further than the sentencing of Tina Peters in Colorado the other day. 9 years. For
Tina
election
Peters is
interference.
a patriot. I gotta tell you, she's a patriot. Just because I helped her fly out of the state when the federales were on her tail and on my
Oh
plane.
my God! And then
She was just a
helped-
guest at my Cyberama. I had no idea what she was up to. If I'd have known she had a thumb drive up her ass, I'd have never touched it.
Oh, just keep selling those pillows for $14.88. Why don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Just keep doing that. He's in huge trouble. Along with her,
Huge.
he has also been indicted in Colorado, so that's delightful. Again, the finding out part, it's all happening kind of all at once, which is what I was imagining would happen because they couldn't get him any sooner than this. But it's all happening at once, and so you have. A lot of truth bombs were dropped about Donald Trump this week between the Jack Smith thing and the New York Times article. And so, again, any day is a good day to be like, you know what? I think I'm done with Donald Trump. Think I've reached my limit. Think I've hit it. Think of just capacity between him and Vance and both of them still lying about the 2020 election and all of the shit that they're doing. Why would you ever continue to support it? It's not going to be good. Project 2025 would be a nightmare for Republican women as well as Democratic women. So, again, everything that they want to do is bad for everybody, not just Democrats. And if you're mad, you can vote secretly. No one has to know who you voted for.
Yep.
It's nobody's business.
Yeah.
Your ballot is private. It's
vote
private.
for Harris,
Don't tell anybody
just
until
like
after
Melania.
It's all done. Or even never tell anybody. We don't care. The Democratic Party is happy to have you, like the Swifties. Yep. We don't care how long it took you to come to the party. You're welcome to come on in. So, I please remember that it's not really like, if you're voting out of spite because you think it's funny to be a dipshit Musk Trump person, it's really not, because you're voting for your future. And also, the thing that I'm trying to appeal to, and I wrote a thing on my Substack, which I hope everybody checks out and subscribes to.
TaraDublinRocks.com.
A clarion call to the white women out there, because it's time that everybody votes for women, including people who love women, support women, and are related to women. Are you related to a woman?
I'm in.
Please vote for her. Please vote for her. So, that's my angle now. This is why I'm wearing the voter shirt with,
Yeah.
It's all about a peaceful future and a peaceful solution for all of us. And again, we touch on this usually at the end of every show because we're wrapping up. But I want you to remember that all of the things that you enjoy about your life, you'll lose under a Trump regime. You don't want a dictator. You want to be able to go to the store whenever you feel like and not have to show somebody a book full of stamps and credits. And you want to be able to cross the border to go visit your grandma in the next state over without having to wait in long lines like you were crossing over into another country. There's basic human freedoms that you take for granted in this country. Say goodbye to all of them under Project 2025. Yes, you dudes. Yes, dudes. It'll happen to you too. And they want to get rid of things that matter, like the education department and the Pentagon, and, just things that we need that matter and keep our country, humming along. Please vote for Democrats.
Yeah. So
please. I'm just fixing things, but please.
Sure. I am just simplifying my message as we get closer to the election, that if you're a Republican, you are voting for women to stay second-class citizens in the United States.
That's true.
Ever. Because right now in this country, because of the actions of voters in 2016, largely our voters, Democrats or alleged Democrats, progressives, posing as progressives, that because they held their nose and didn't vote for Hillary Clinton or turned away or didn't vote at all, 75,000 votes made the difference between Hillary Clinton being president and Donald Trump being president. And what happened during that time? 3 Supreme Court justices were put on the bench that said Roe is settled law, and then overturned it. And that was the whole fucking point. We didn't lose Roe v. Wade 2 years ago. We lost it 7 years ago.
Yes, we did.
And women,
we all knew it.
Right now.
And we were screaming about it.
Right fucking now.
No.
Women are second-class citizens in this country. Because if I want to move to another state as a male, I don't have to worry about any laws that don't apply to anybody else. I'm under the same rules and regs that everybody else is. But if a woman wants to change what state she lives in, she has a new choice. Does she want to have the ability to have reproductive care if she might be dying from an ectopic pregnancy? And if and that in and of itself should be a fucking non-starter. If you're I think there are chips in the vaccine, I got news for you, fucker. If the government can make you keep a non-viable fetus inside you, they could sure as shit keep a chip inside you. You want to talk about slippery slopes, you dumb motherfucker? But right now, it's not if. 2025, Project 2025, they're going to eliminate the EPA, the FDA, the FAA. They don't give a shit about any of this stuff. It's sovereign citizen time. They want to go back to the Wild West because they think they would survive because Ted Cruz thinks he's a fucking boss and they're all morons. But that's if. That's will. That might. If they get elected, he might be able to pass and da-da-da. Right now, this very second, women are second-class citizens in the United States of America because of voters' choices last time. Is this vote shaming? You fucking right it is.
That's right. That is right.
If you vote for a Republican this time, you're voting to codify that women are and should be second-class citizens in the United States of America. Period. Your mom, your sister, your daughter, your friend, your girlfriend, it doesn't matter. They're fucked forever. They are at the whim of their rapist or their incestuous relative. They can be trapped and forced to produce, be a broodmare and do nothing about it by their attacker. They'll have no recompense, no recourse, nothing. And eventually, because again, on top of that, how do you build on top of that shit? In Project 2025, you get rid of contraception. So even women who are in relationships don't get to choose when and if they're going to have a fucking child. That's third class, motherfucker. That's servitude. And that's what they want. That's what Elon Musk wants. That's what Donald Trump wants. And if you don't believe me, ask his first wife who's buried on a fucking golf course and his dumbass kids who are okay with it. Other than that, I have no opinion.
No, I mean, Democrats protect the needy and Republicans protect the greedy. And that's really what it comes down to. Democrats are the true pro-life party. We have talked about this repeatedly. I say it all the time. They want people to have the choice of when they start their family. Then they want that family to thrive. And they want you to thrive from the moment you are a viable fetus to the moment you leave this planet. They want you to enjoy your life without the threat of violence from your neighbor, Democrats don't want you to get shot at school, at the mall, at a movie theater, in your church, temple, or mosque. Anywhere you go, we're not trying to take your guns away. We just don't want you to kill other people with them. I don't think that's a lot to ask.
I just want you to have to be able to reload between killing 10 people and the next 10 people. Is that too much to ask?
It's so fucked up. And the things that you think Democrats are... When was the last time a Democrat showed up at your front door and asked and told you they were taking anything from you? If you could provide footage out there of your Ring doorbell footage of a Democrat going,
"Where to get your gun?"
I'm a local congressman, and I came to get your gun. That has never happened, and that never will happen. Okay? So all of this fear bullshit and all of this terrorizing that Donald Trump is doing to you, that he's been doing to the rest of the country, he has sold you a fake bill of goods that anyone's coming to take anything from you. Democrats are just like, we want you to work. We want you to have a safe home. We want you to have clean water and healthy food and access to child care and access to health care and access to education. These are not bad things. You do have choices in this country. And if you want to continue to have choices in this country, you vote for Democrats and not for a regime where a guy's like, yeah, I want to be a dictator. That's bad. Being a dictator is bad. So I'll leave you with that. Also, before I forget, which is the first thing I wanted to tell you, is that Ron wants you to talk about your audio podcast.
Oh, yes.
Our friend Ron says talk about the audio podcast because we're both going to be doing that kind of thing.
That's right. House Parks Podcast, Megaworldwide. You can get it wherever your podcasts come from. And please do that. Please not only subscribe to it, but also, because it's free, subscribe to it and then give me a review. That helps boost it up there or whatever. And let me know in the chat room if you have. That'd be lovely too. Yes.
Thumbs up. buy my book, The Sound of Settling, at TaraDublinRocks.com, and also please leave a good review. Somebody wrote me a tweet yesterday that made me cry, that they loved my book so much.
Aw.
And I know, and it's a struggle because right now, and I don't feel right about like probably not going to try to promote my book today on Twitter because it's October 7th and it's a somber occasion. I should be out there like, rock and roll love story, Dave Grohl, yay. But I'm still very much trying to get the proper book deal so that I can work on the adaptation and get the sequel out. I need an agent and proper representation and a proper book deal because if Melania can do it, so can I. And I don't need a ghostwriter, and I can tell the truth. So we're still working on that. So please buy my book at TaraDublinRocks.com and follow me on all of the socials and sign up for my Substack because I never will lie to you.
Aw.
Tara
Dublin. I know. Tara Dublin rocks, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Love you as well. Bye. There she goes, ladies and gentlemen. It's Hal Sparks Mornings Mega Worldwide, the greatest live stream that exists on the internet for good reason. Because the charm, the intellect, the caring, the comedy, it's all there. And I will continue to do that for as long as the Lord needs me on this path. I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, oh God, that's terrible. Ladies and gentlemen, the Lord wants you to know that one of the ways you can help us support this show and keep it on the air is become a Patreon. That's right. The Lord has directed you to help us out here. Subscribe and Venmo and Super Chat and help us be the best show we can possibly be. And if you can come see a live show, please do so. But if you can't, we're just glad you're out there. We're glad you're listening. We're glad you're watching and subscribing and liking and thumbs up and in some cases giving us that angry emoji. That's right. Because the Lord wants you to know that of all of his commandments in the Old Testament, the only one he really gives a fuck about is not eating shrimp. Because your fingers get all stinky for no good reason. And he wants you to know that that's no way to live. And so I think the Lord would also want us to address, if I could, let us all bow our heads and pay homage to the kidney that
the kidney has a very special place in the heart.
Oh dear. Well, that's not right. Thank you guys so much. Hit that like on your way.